Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Geekvolution Open Forum. I am Captain Logan, and this is our third official Open Forum, but the fourth in this format on a Wednesday. I tried this a few weeks ago with a video called A Wild Captain Logan Appears, and can you believe it's been a whole month now since I've been broadcasting to you live by my lonesome in an afternoon? It feels like just yesterday I, on a whim, got up in the morning and said, you know what? Miss live shows, feel like doing a live show. And now here we are, 4 weeks in. We've been developing a pretty good audience for this show. And as I've said before, I intend to keep doing this as long as there are a few people in the afternoon that want to chat with me. Thank you guys so much for making this a worthwhile thing to do, for popping in, for asking thoughtful questions. I have such a blast with you guys every week, and it's really exciting to finally have regular live shows back on the channel again. I got a lot of folks already here and in the comments. Michael McAllister just asked if Eric would be here this time. Yeah, Eric works on Wednesdays, and at some point we will probably do another show with the both of us live. Maybe we'll skip this on a Wednesday and do it on a different day. We had talked about both doing this on the off weeks when we don't have an omnibus, but I've been asking Eric to do a lot of stuff lately, and I guess we've both been doing things a lot together for the last year and a half or more since he's been living here at Geekvolution headquarters, right down here in the Batcave. But he's got much more of, for lack of a better way to put it, his own life now, a social life, lots of his own stuff going on, and he's a real busy guy. And so I wanted to have at least something else that I wasn't throwing on his plate that I could do on my own, but he's still answering Q&A questions on the omnibus, so make sure whenever I put up a notice for that on Facebook that you jump on that, and if there's anything in particular that you really want to ask him, send me a personal message on Facebook or respond to that on Facebook or Twitter whenever I post that on a Sunday, or usually I try to post that the day before the Sunday when we shoot the omnibus. We're going to shoot another one this Sunday, so if there's something you really want him to answer, make sure and do that there. See lots of folks in the comments. We've got our awesome logo guy, Danny Nixon. Thanks for being here, Danny. It's good to see you. We got the real Manos in the comments. We got longtime subscribers, Blue Dragon 5, Ultron 32, Spider-Man Sidekick 1, Jeffrey Patron, one of our regular patrons. Thanks for being here, buddy. It's good to see you. Blue Dragon 5, if I didn't already say his name, I think maybe I did. There's Nikos. There's Mario 500 now. Good to see everybody. Thanks for being here. Hi there. Going to answer questions for you for the next hour. Anything you want to talk about. I'm going to answer as many things as I can that pop up. And I'm already seeing a bunch of comments here. I wanted to talk about a couple of things before I got into it. So I'm going to copy and paste some of these questions that I want to make sure and tackle. And I misread that one, and that was really amusing. I'll get to that in a little bit. So I guess I'll go ahead and talk about this real briefly because there are already a lot of questions. Thanks for being here, guys. This is always really super cool. This last weekend, and I'm going to talk about this some on the omnibus, but I thought I'd give you guys a quick sneak peek on this. I went to Planet Comic-Con, which is our premier comic book convention out here in Kansas City. I didn't work this one. I've worked that show before, had a table. I've done trivia for that show before. This year I just went. Brandon and I took Jason, and I primarily went because I had an interview lined up with Melinda Snodgrass, who I think I've mentioned before that I was going to do that. That was an absolutely wonderful interview. I can't wait to show you guys. It's going to be on the omnibus this week, and I'll, of course, also post it separately. But she wrote the beloved Star Trek The Next Generation episode, The Measure of a Man, and she was the script editor for season 2 and 3. She's also a big editor and co-founder of the ongoing pro superhero series Wildcards, which started all the way back in 1987 at the exact same time as Star Trek The Next Generation. And she is best friends, really good friends with George R.R. Martin, who also co-created that series with her. That is an absolute treat. Make sure that you listen to that interview. You'll learn a lot, and you'll learn a lot about Star Trek, about Wildcards if you have any interest in that. But I know a lot of people don't know what that is, but you'll learn a lot about that from her, and it might intrigue you, entice you to go look at that, and you'll learn a little bit about George R.R. Martin also. So that was the main reason I was there. I've been a little bit conned out the last couple of years. That whole thing completely reinvigorated my interest in conventions and just made me a lot. I don't know. It kind of got me really excited, even more so than I already usually am, about just doing what I do. It was kind of it was kind of a pick-me-up kind of moment, and all I wanted to do after that show was work on stuff, and it was an absolute delight. So I want to show you guys, and again, I'll show this on the Omnibus, and if you saw the live show I did the other night with the Genesis Gems guys, I showed this to those guys, but not a whole. We don't have a ton of video game interest on the channel, so I'm sure a lot of you guys didn't see that video. So I try to get a sketch cover at every convention I go to, and this time, regardless of the fact that I had already gotten a sketch cover done of Lord Zed back at Power Morphicon a couple of years ago in California, I did another Lord Zed cover. When I say I did, I mean I bought a cover and took it to an artist that I thought had a good style for it and asked him to draw something. And I asked him just to draw something with Batman and Lord Zed, and I didn't give him any ideas about what to do with it. And I was a little bit concerned because when he, and this is going to make me sound like a total dork when I say this, but a total raging Power Rangers fanboy. But when I saw him write down his notes to do this cover, he wrote Zed, Z-E-D, instead of with 2 Ds. And I thought, oh, he's not a Power Rangers guy. He doesn't even know who Lord Zed is. I don't know what this cover is going to be like. Of course, he looked it up on his phone to see what Lord Zed looked like, and he totally nailed it. So he drew me a Batman throwing a Batarang off of Lord Zed's face. And this is absolutely spectacular. I got a sketch cover for the first issue of Justice League Power Rangers. And yeah, I didn't give this book overall a real positive review, but I thought it would be fun to see what somebody would do with the crossover on a sketch cover. So I got that done, and I thought that was really awesome. I also got this Batman ring, which is super cool. And the guy who sold it to me actually gave me a super good deal on 2 of these because I couldn't choose between them. And this one is a ring, you know, it's got bats on the sides. I think it's super awesome, and I've already gotten a lot of compliments on it. I feel like I should be like calling Captain Planet right now, or like the Batman equivalent of Captain Planet with my 4 other deserving teenagers in arms helping me call the Batman Planeteers. But anyway, I couldn't decide between them, and this was an old design that he wasn't making anymore. So when I couldn't pick, he said, "Well, I tell you what, I'll give you 2 of them, both of them for a really cool price." I ended up paying basically 40 for one and 10 for the other when they should have been 40 a piece. And so this was the other ring. And I'm not wearing them at the same time, but I might occasionally switch them out, or Sarah might wear this one. We haven't decided yet. But anyway, so that was some of my experience at Planet Comic Con. I also met some comic creators you might be interested in. I talked to Freddie Williams II, who is the artist on Batman Ninja Turtles, and he's got his 2nd series going right now, which I haven't started yet. I bought all the issues so far, but I haven't gotten around to reading them yet, but I have reviewed this first one, and he was a joy to talk to and a whole lot of fun, and seemed really amiable to possibly coming on the channel at some point. He said he doesn't do a whole lot of these kinds of things, but if we had him on for something really specific as opposed to just a generic interview, he said he might be interested, and he really perked up when we were talking about Mirage Ninja Turtles. He said, if you ever did something with Mirage Ninja Turtles, and I said, well, Eric and I are about to do the 3rd volume. We're 2 volumes in, and he was like, oh, cool. So we might actually have Freddie Williams II come in and talk to us about the Eastman and Laird stuff. So look forward to that. I mean, if it ends up happening, but there's a real good chance at that. And then I talked to Brian Azzarello, who I had sign my first issue of Dark Knight 3. Was hoping to have him sign my copy of Lex Luthor Man of Steel, which is my favorite work of his, and I think kind of the definitive take on Lex Luthor, but I couldn't find my copy for some reason, so I had him sign that. He was really cool. And then I will tell my Tom King story on the show on the Omnibus, but I did meet Tom King and had him sign my favorite issue of his series so far, the Double Date issue where Batman and Superman and Catwoman and Lois all go to a superhero-themed carnival and initially are not allowed in because they aren't superheroes, and because they're in their street clothes. And I talked about that a little bit on the Omnibus last time, just this particular issue. But Eric and I are going to be reviewing the first 18 issues in Tom King's run. So the I Am kind of trilogy, I Am Gotham, I Am Suicide, and I Am Bane. And that's going to be on the Omnibus this coming week and on the Comic Vault for that. And I will be talking about other stuff with the convention, and I'll tell my Tom King story then. But anyway, AMC Comics, I mentions Kevin Conroy. Real quick, let me get the thing I had signed by him. For some reason, I forgot to put it on my desk. Give me just one moment, and thanks for mentioning it. How unprofessional. Just leaving you guys staring at a blank screen. This is now the second live show in a row where I have felt the need to do that. Anyway, I had Kevin Conroy sign my Laughing Fish statue with Batman chained up down there, standing with Joker and with his foot on top of Batman. And I say statue. This is plastic. I don't think it's a resin thing, but it was. I thought it was the best thing I had in the Batcave down here that was already on display, that I wouldn't have to move something in order to put up. That was from that show, and I had Kevin Conroy signed the plank there. You notice that he personalized it to Captain Logan. He is one of those guys that actually is willing to sign something without personalizing it. But because Adam West insisted on personalizing my Batarang, and he's the only other bona fide Batman that I have a signature from, I thought I would be consistent and have Kevin Conroy write Captain Logan on this. And I'm never going to sell this. I'm never going to get rid of this. So why not get it personalized? So that's what I did. I thought that was really cool. I could not believe the reaction for the picture that I posted of Jason and I meeting Kevin Conroy that I posted on Facebook the other day. I think that's the record of likes on our Facebook. Not that I keep up with that real hard, but you know, usually like 20 or 30 likes is pretty good for us. But sometimes if it's something semi-major, it'll be a whole lot more than that. And sometimes I'm kind of surprised by the things that end up being major. And that was like 250 likes. People just came out of the woodwork and were excited to see that we got to meet Kevin Conroy, and that was really fun. Of course, it was a decently long line. We didn't get to spend a whole lot of time talking to him, but I did mention that one of my favorite things in that show is Clock King, and Jason hasn't heard as much Kevin Conroy, of course, as as I have. As maybe some other Batmans, and so I made sure that Jason refamiliarized himself with what Kevin Conroy sounds like, and we watched the Clock King episode that morning, and I mentioned that to Kevin Conroy, and he said, "Oh yeah, that's a good one." And but we didn't have a lengthy exchange or anything, so I don't have any really interesting stories to tell you about Conroy. But of course, he was a class act, and it was a lot of fun to get to meet him. We also met Amy Jo Johnson, and Jason got his final original Power Ranger signature of the original Power Rangers that are still alive, because unfortunately the original Yellow Ranger passed away from a car wreck in the late 90s. But anyway, so a bazillion comments and lots of questions and lots of comments happening right now live. So I should make sure and start talking directly to you guys. Let me copy and paste a couple more things here, and then I will just start scrolling up. So let's begin with the very first question that was in the list today that I liked quite a bit. Spider-Man Sidekick 1. Once again, thanks for being here. Hi there. Could Dr. Doom support his own trilogy in the MCU? I think of villains that make a lot of sense to get their own stories, Dr. Doom is way, way, way up there. And if they do a real classic, real interesting take on that character, when they inevitably, I want to say at this point, inevitably put the Fantastic Four in the Marvel Universe, unless somehow or rather they're not allowed to let the deal with Fox go through. I'm pretty sure that's not going to happen. I mean, I'm pretty sure that not letting it go through will happen. They will end up getting all that. I think that makes a lot of sense, a lot of potential sense. I think at least giving him his own movie and seeing how that goes could be really cool. Doom is one of those villains who curiously works really well on his own. I think a lot of that is because he is, by and large, a benevolent dictator. So he's evil, but only in the sense that he wants to run everything, and he's conceited, and he sees himself as better than everyone. I've always seen Mojo Jojo and Powerpuff Girls as kind of a take on Dr. Doom, where he's the benevolent dictator. When you look at the last episode of Powerpuff Girls, when Mojo Jojo finally gets the key to the world, which is hilarious, he ends up being a really great ruler, and he just likes being evil too much. So ultimately, he's not able to hold on to his power. But that's kind of Dr. Doom, and it would be it's always interesting when he has his own stories, and of course, he's kind of a superhero right now. I fell off of the what is it, I can't think, it's on the tip of my tongue, the Dr. Doom Iron Man series, Infamous Iron Man, but he that was a great series, what I read of it, and interesting to see him kind of playing superhero. He also, I'm hoping that when Doctor Doom winds up, when Fantastic Four winds up all getting blended into the Marvel Cinematic Universe, we see more of the magic stuff get totally embraced. Because, of course, we have that with Doctor Strange, but there's still a little bit of like a middle of the road, is it science, is it magic kind of thing going on. Oh, a little bit. I mean, it does basically come right out and say it's magic, but Eric and I both thought that they were still somewhat trepidatious about all of that. I think now that has been broached, it's a really good time to bring Doctor Doom in, because of course he is a big sorcerer in his own right, and it would be really cool to see Doctor Doom, or to see Doctor Strange brought into the Fantastic Four movie when they finally make it, because of all of that. Cinematographic, I almost said cinematographic question. Cinematographic, question for you, Captain Logan. Is there a difference between subtlety and ambiguity in storytelling? This is an excellent question. I feel like this could be part of a writing GNN, but I'll answer it real briefly here. Right off, just on the spot, my immediate reaction is the difference between subtlety and ambiguity is, if something is subtle, it's in fiction, it's definitely there. You just might not have noticed it the first time that you looked at it, but there's evidence to support that it's there and that it's definitely what you think it is, whether we're talking about just like a concrete element of the story that doesn't jump out and grab you, or isn't a huge story element but is definitely there, again, concretely, or I mean, like something physical and tangible, or whether it's something thematic, where like you have a layered context, where you have where the story is giving you some subtext, where you can look at the story and say, no, this subtext is definitely there. I can point to this evidence, but you might not have noticed it at first glance. And ambiguity, and sometimes, of course, this is intentional, is when it could be that, but it's dicey. And again, sometimes that isn't it. Where you're allowed to make your own case about what is happening or not. When you get to the end of a story and it's left open-ended. Did this person die? Did this person survive? Was it all somebody's dream the whole time? That kind of thing. And of course, that sort of thing can even be in the middle of a story. It's not necessarily an ending, and can even just be about backgrounds and things. So like for instance, in The Dark Knight, the Joker's origin, his background is ambiguous. He gives 3 different stories as to how he got his scars, and they could all 3 somehow be true, or only one of them could be true, or none of them could be true. That's not subtle, that's ambiguous. Ultron 32, with thoughts on the new Marvel's fresh start. Yeah, I don't immediately like the way that they're marketing that. It reeks of desperation to me. I'm really worried about them. And what I thought was really perplexing about this, and I haven't read a ton about this yet. So Dan sent me a couple articles yesterday, so there might be more information about this so far. But if you don't know what we're talking about, Marvel is making a big deal out of, we're renumbering again. We're going to have new creative teams. We're doing kind of a new relaunch, not a reboot, but a relaunch. And of course they are, because Rebirth has been really successful. And of course, we're even past Rebirth now. Like, DC is just in a good place by and large, as far as sales and interest and stuff is concerned. And Marvel's really lagging behind. And they've tried another kind of pseudo relaunch here and there since then, especially the new Legacy thing. And that's not really caught on. The Legacy renumbering, they're already, with this fresh start thing, going to get rid of. That didn't take. And so they're like, fine, we'll just start everything over at #1 again, is what it sounds like. But instead of having some kind of new umbrella, like they usually would, like Marvel Now or something, they're just saying it's a fresh start, which seems really generic to me. And they had this little teaser trailer that came up yesterday, and we'll talk about this in the omnibus too. It was like a minute and a half. And it was basically just the new editor-in-chief, C.B. Kowalski, saying, everybody's really excited about this new relaunch we're doing at Marvel. And I walked down the halls, and I've never seen anybody so excited. But of course, they're being really ambiguous, not subtle, but ambiguous about what exactly it is they're doing. They gave us no information at all, and it was just all the standard talking points when you have a relaunch. You know, like it's gonna have stuff you've never seen before, and it's gonna be really engaging and great for new readers and old readers alike. And if you've they have Quesada show up. He's like, if you've never read a comic book before, it'll be a perfect jumping on point for you. But if you've been with us for all this time, it'll be great for you too. And they tell us nothing. But then, and you might have expected one of two things: either just a whole big blown press release like Rebirth did, which immediately got people interested and seemed to be the perfect way to sell that whole thing. I was really surprised that they didn't lead with that, or a teaser that announces a couple of things and says stay tuned, or just says don't worry, we're going to tell you some stuff really soon. We're just letting you know that this is happening and trying to whet your palate for it. And when you look at that video, it kind of feels like it could be like a month before they tell us anything. Just, we've got a big new restart. It's going to be great. The very same day, they start announcing things, and there's a new Avengers book that was announced that has Ghost Rider on the team, of all people, announced with Jason Aaron, which Eric said is not a big surprise, and I think he's absolutely right about that. I'm going to try that book. I think it could be really great. But it was really perplexing that they started announcing things after they put that video out. I thought that was really interesting. Draven G just wrote thoughts on the Brainiac reveal for Krypton. I hadn't seen that yet. I saw so spoilers, thanks. No, I'm kidding. I saw a video last week that was making a big deal out of quests or something, and it had somebody holding the Superman suit. That's all I got from that. So I think they're putting out a bunch of little teasers because we're only a couple weeks out from Krypton, and so I didn't see that there was a Brainiac thing. That's really cool because, and you might think, well, that's really obvious, like that you would go to a big heavy hitter like Brainiac, and of course Krypton stories always have to have Brainiac involved, but that's not really true, right? Like Brainiac as an invention, and I don't know if that's how they'll do it, but I'm assuming so, as an invention of Krypton, was, if memory serves, done in animated series first, which was inspired there. Whether they were first to the table on that or not, but I think they were. And if they're going to that, that's really exciting. I think they've actually, so a couple years ago, I interviewed Kevin J. Anderson, who wrote the Last Days of Krypton novel, which I think is the definitive take on Krypton. And I could be wrong about this, but I believe they consulted him on this show. And if I'm right about that, that gets me a lot more excited about it, because Kevin talked to me about how he was a little bit bummed that they didn't consult him when they made Man of Steel and did all the Krypton stuff, mythology at the beginning of that. And this is in that same universe. So if they've, like, he's not a producer, I don't even think he's probably an official consultant, but if they talked to him at all and they took any of his ideas and they read that book, that would be very exciting to me. So I want to be really jazzed about this show. We'll see what happens, and I will, of course, review at least the pilot when that comes out. Blue Dragon 5, Cap, what would you do if you were writing a Deadpool story? I glanced at this earlier and immediately thought, I said, what would you do if you were a Deadpool story? And was perplexed by that, and then discovered that that was not what it said. What would I do with Deadpool? I don't right away have like a great Deadpool story. As a lot of people know, my favorite Deadpool story is Deadpool Kills the Marvel Universe, and I like using Deadpool to explore the kind of metafiction idea with Marvel, and actually discussing like what it would be like to be a character of fiction that knew you were a character of fiction and knew that there was a larger world out there that you could never be a part of, and that there was a writer who was just like forcing you through all these horrible gauntlets just for the entertainment pleasure of a real world audience. And so it's hard for me to get past that idea with Deadpool, and I don't know how you keep exploring that without doing a whole lot of rehash, and it's kind of impossible to write a Deadpool story where he comes into the real world, right? Because it's still a comic book, so that's kind of weird. It's like Gwenpool. I'd love to like I see her go back to the real world with all the stuff that she sees and the experiences she has in the Marvel universe, but it would be a comic book again, so it's still a fiction. It's like, unless you made a movie, I guess, and there's still a different fourth wall there, it would be weird to have a comic book where she physically shows back up. But yeah, the first thing that comes to my mind is like Deadpool, like actually comes to the real or influences the real world in some way. I would want to keep going with some kind of like meta contextual thing with Deadpool. What I'd love to see, and this doesn't really answer the question, but what I'd love to see with Deadpool on the big screen is that somehow, or rather, and this is probably a pipe dream, but especially if Marvel gets access to Fox stuff and they have multiple universes, we could see this at least with their stuff. I would like to see Deadpool cross between universes and be allowed to show up in somebody else's movie, and maybe like explain to some character how the multiverse works. I'd really like to see that. I think Deadpool, maybe like if we're ever able to get the two companies to play nice together and do a crossover again between DC and Marvel, Deadpool would maybe be the way to make that happen. And I think you could, and some people might go, oh no, because then it would just be a comedy. Well, the Deadpool part would. You could still have dramatic elements to it, but those are my initial thoughts. Suburbia Pictures, most highly effective MCU antagonist so far. That's tough. There's at this point, it's really hard not to say the villain of Black Panther, of course, and we'll talk about that when we review Black Panther on the Omnibus, but he's obviously way up there, and I imagine that's why you asked the question. But it's, he's up there, maybe is the definitive answer at this point. And I'm like starting to blank on some other characters now that I've got him in my head and I'm thinking about it, because he's such an interesting antagonist and foil for that character. It's hard not to. And I saw somebody earlier say he's like a really good Netflix antagonist finally in the Marvel Cinematic movies. It's hard not to just go to MCU villains, or excuse me, to Netflix villains with MCU, because I think Kingpin is one of the best. I think Cottonmouth is up there, though I wish he'd been around longer. And of course, Kilgrave is brilliant and fascinating. The guys. Whoever said that, it might have been Manos, I can't remember, but whoever said that, that makes a lot of sense, because we got to explore him a lot more than we usually get to in a Marvel movie, and usually these other characters that we get in Netflix are more interesting, partly just because they have more time to flesh them out, and we get a whole 13 episodes with them, or however long it is. And I think by the end of that movie, he is more or less as developed, or at least as developed as he possibly could have been. Really close to some of those Netflix villains. I also think the Vulture is way up there, and of course that's on a different level. I'm not saying that he's fascinating in the same way. I'm saying that he's a really well done, sympathetic antagonist. I think, and I made this argument to Eric the other day, I think that the Vulture, for the material that Spider-Man is doing, is as good of a villain as the guy in Black Panther, whose name right now in my brain is escaping me. But anyway, Killmonger, yeah, that's right. And I thought it was funny that we've had 10 years now of Marvel continuity in film, and at the moment we're bookended with two Mongers. We've had two Mongers. We have an Ironmonger and Killmonger, and we've had like 3 or 4 kill something. We've had Kilgrave, we've had Killmonger, and we've had Aldrich Killian. A lot of kills in our Marvel universe, but not huge kill counts until we get to Black Panther, and that's a thing that I was really surprised to see, and really appreciated that Kevin Feige and those guys allowed them in Black Panther to go as far as to have a guy who puts all of his kills on his own body, because the big criticism for a lot of people with the Marvel Universe is we don't let these movies go dark enough, even when they really need to be allowed to go there. I think Winter Soldier is a good counterexample, but where we have this big divide where it's like the dark and gritty and really scary stuff can only happen in the Netflix shows, and you'll never get that on the big screen. And I think Black Panther has completely changed that. It really turned the tables over on that whole thing. Okay, so I've still got about half an hour, and I've only answered like 5 or 6 questions because all the questions so far have been really good. And I'm going to need you guys to give me to bear with me as I scroll up and answer some questions as I go along. So here we go. I tell you what, I'm going to scroll up and I'm going to copy. I'm just going to copy all this so that it's not constantly moving. You guys are great. Thanks for all the interaction. Really appreciate it. Somebody else agrees with me about Vulture. Cool. I'm gonna go from bottom to top. A lot of people just talking about things I was just talking about, so I've got to scroll through some things before I see some actual questions. I'm looking for question marks. Donnie St. Pierre, describe wildcards in one word. That's really tough. Some of the stories on their own I would describe simply as mortifying, but it's, I don't know, one word is really hard, like to really sum it up. Like intriguing, like thought-provoking, I guess is 2 words. You could put a hyphen in there and kind of make it one word. Mature, I guess, which is an easy thing to go to, but Wildcards has a whole lot in common with Watchmen. There was like something in the air right then where we wanted to do realistic superheroes or superheroes for grown-ups. And again, you'll hear Melinda Snodgrass talk all about that. Dan Schneider, thoughts on Telltale making Catwoman Riddler's daughter? Was that a good call? Okay, so please don't spoil anything else for me with with the Telltale games, because I haven't gotten to that yet. We haven't started and I'm sorry that I just spoiled that. Honestly, I was just reading out loud, and I should have read that before I said it. I'm sorry, I should not have done that. So now we all know. But we haven't gotten to that yet. Eric and I were hoping to do another playthrough. I've mentioned this before, of the first Telltale game before we get to that. Man, I wish I hadn't said that out loud now, because I spoiled it for some other people also. Blue Dragon 5, thoughts on Batman White Knight so far? I've only read the first issue. I've got the rest of it. I think it's absolutely fascinating. I really like these kind of alternate Batman universes that we're getting now, where we're not afraid to take characters kind of against, kind of counter to the traditional spirit of that character, which is a thing that you wouldn't want to see done in mainstream DC continuity, but I think is totally fine in order to explore different aspects of that character or other characters. So I don't have any problem with a Batman that snaps and goes nuts especially if I believe it, if I buy that character, if I know enough about that character that we got them there. That's what we do with Superman and Injustice, and I like it a lot there too. I think Injustice, I talked about this in the omnibus last week, does a really good job of exploring the tenets of Superman's ideals by like it proves that it fully 100%, Tom Taylor understands who and what Superman is supposed to be by deconstructing him in ruining him, in making him go completely against all of that, and gradually turning into the opposite of that, but starting from that place. And I think you can do that with Batman too, and I think that's kind of what White Knight is doing, and it gives us a really fascinating kind of humanized Joker, unless that all ends up getting flipped, in the middle somewhere. And like I said, I've only read that first issue. I really like that really gritty kind of pencily artwork. I think it's fantastic, and I'm really excited that we're getting more of these kind of Elseworlds Batman stories. The story Wade's doing, I can't remember the name of that right now. I'm caught up on that. It's on the tip of my tongue. Something Dark Knight, I forget. about Bruce Wainwright, the kid in the real world. That's another comic that's in the real world, in something akin to the real world anyway. The kid who is obsessed with Batman and then loses his parents and sort of not becomes Batman, but kind of teams up with a wraith-like bat creature, like he's Batman. That one's also quite brilliant so far. What else? Grady Childs, have you played Cuphead? No, I've not gotten to that yet. And you said it's on Steam. It's on Steam, so I could run it on PC. Yeah, I definitely have a PC powerful enough to run that. I just didn't even know it was on Steam. Honestly, I should have looked that up. I thought that was an Xbox exclusive, so that's the only reason I haven't played it yet. I've heard nothing but great things. I've heard a lot about the soundtrack for Cuphead. If you're not familiar with that, it looks like, and I've only seen trailers, it's kind of a classic 40s like serial era cartoon that you play, and it looks really authentic to that style of animation, and it looked absolutely brilliant. So thanks for telling me that that was on Steam. I'll definitely check that out. I'm going to make myself a note right now. Cuphead on Steam. Thanks for letting me know that. Part of the reason I do these shows is so that I can learn something. So thank you for teaching me things. I really appreciate it. Oh, this is a good one. Donnie St. Pierre. I'm jumping around a little bit. I'm seeing more things scrolling. You find a copy of Detective Comics number 27. Do you keep it or sell it? That's tough. I guess it somewhat depends on my finances. Like if I was in real dire straits, I guess I would feel the need to sell that. But then, of course, you'd be almost independently wealthy if you sold that. So yeah, I would have a hard time not selling it. And I mean, like it would hurt my feelings, of course, because that would be a holy grail, of course, and you don't expect that you'd ever get one of those. That you'd be able to lay your hands on it. I mean, that's a what, $1.5 million comic at this point, or has sold for that in the past, if it's anything like a decent grade. Yeah, if I was able to sell that for like $500,000 or more, I think it would be irresponsible to my family not to sell it. I think that's my answer. I think for me, it would be irresponsible not to. If I lived on my own, that's a harder question. Let's scroll up, shall we? Scott McCall, thoughts on the spectacular Spider-Man TV series. I've talked about this before. We're going to review it at some point. Dan and I have been talking about doing a Bat Chat type series on that forever. And I realized we're not doing Bat Chat right now. I'm going to try to bring that back soon, but I'll talk more about that when we finally get to it. I think it's really sophisticated television and animated television, and I think it's right up there with Young Justice. Now that I've watched the first season of that, I'm going to try to finish the second season of Young Justice and talk about that on the Omnibus this week. I don't know if I'll quite get there in the middle of doing Punisher. Oh, and I need to mention this to you guys. I posted about this on Facebook earlier. I have been inundated with comments and messages about the Punisher and how dare you not review it yet? When are you finally getting that? And is Vince going to be there? Okay, so I didn't before, like a week ago. I didn't want to promise anything, but now for sure that is happening. So I've been spending all week refreshing myself on Punisher. I never watched the last 2 episodes, and it had been like almost 2 months since I had last watched it, so I decided to start back from scratch. So I'm 7 episodes in. I'm going to finish it today and tomorrow. And then Vince is coming over tomorrow night to pre-record the segment that will go in the Omnibus this week for the Punisher. So nobody fear, nobody panic. That is definitely happening now. And barring some kind of unforeseen circumstance, Vince is coming over tomorrow night to record that with me. So that is what's going on there. Eric won't be on that review because he's not gotten around to watching it yet, but Vince and I will both be doing that. So what else? Blue Dragon 5, have you watched any more Freakazoid? No, I haven't gone back to it. I need to do that. I bought those 2 seasons of Freakazoid, and we reviewed the first couple episodes, but I've not been back to it yet. Give Greg Weisman his own Spider-Man trilogy. Yeah, of course, that's a good idea. It would be really cool if they allowed him to come back and do a 3rd season of that show. I'm sure being in the middle of Young Justice, he probably wouldn't want to have to do both at the same time. I would imagine, but I don't know how the rights for that work and if there would be a good platform for it, because I think the main reason that Young Justice is coming back is because the outcry from fans when it was on Netflix for another season was really well timed, because it was at precisely the moment that they were starting to develop their superhero streaming service, and they need material for that. So when they saw the sheer enormity of interest in that, they said, yeah, fine, we'll let Greg Weisman come back and make more of that show. And there's not anything like that for Marvel, so I'm not sure that we would ever see that for Spectacular. But that would be really cool. Michael McAllister, watch Jurassic World 2 flop and they'll be screwed. I agree with that. I think there's every possibility that Lost Kingdom does not do remarkably well. It certainly isn't going to do what the last one did, and you can't begrudge them making a sequel right away, considering it broke records and it was such a big deal. And there were, I think, places to go after that movie. It doesn't strike me as an obligatory sequel, especially because the producers talked about how they had plans. You know, if that did well, there were things they really wanted to do with it, and it watches kind of like a culmination of all of it, and it would have been a really good ending point, but it also watches like a thing that wants to keep going. I mean, yeah, with the whole grabbing the embryos thing at the end, and maybe we'll militarize dinosaurs. You could call that sequel fodder before it's the first of an ongoing series or a trilogy or whatever they were to do with it. But I think it also feels like it could be the first of a big sprawling series. But I think a lot of people are saying it looks like it's going to have Lost World syndrome, in that it's maybe a little bit too close to that story. B, it might be all over the place and they don't really know what they're doing with it. And C, it's probably not going to perform real well. And Lost World looked obligatory. And I think Jurassic World strikes me as a thing that a lot of people were really excited about, for maybe the same reason I was, that we were finally going to get to see a working park, but they didn't really care about seeing anything after that, and that might have been a really good one last hurrah. Here's my question. Would this movie be more accepted to people? Because a lot of people are hating on those trailers. Do you think, I guess I'm just asking the audience, do you guys think, because it's like, I don't have anybody to talk to, Eric's not here. Do you guys think that if we still had a park, if it hadn't ended that way, that people would be more excited about it? Or would they think, well, it's going to be more of the same? Like, what is the point of keeping the park open? I think Jurassic Park sequels are just really hard to do. But Donnie St. Pierre, again, are you a fan of any strange food combination? Sorry, I just went to him because I thought that was an interesting question. I really like pineapple on my pizza. A lot of people don't like pineapple on their pizza, but I do. And I have not had Canadian bacon with pineapple in eons, because on a whim once, probably a decade and a half ago, I mean, I think I'd been doing this since I met my wife, I thought to put pineapple with sausage and loved that combination of flavor. And I have continued to eat pineapple on my pizza that way ever since. Daniel Davis thinks I might be right about that people would be more excited if it was still about the park. Blue Dragon 5, did you see the Preacher show? No, I didn't, and I'll level with you. I read years ago, on Vince's recommendation, I read the first. Well, I say recommendation. Vince knew that would not be my thing, but I was curious about it because it was a big thing. It was popular, and so I borrowed it from Vince, and I read a couple chapters, and frankly found, at least the beginning of it, it might get a lot better, but I found the prose in that, or prose, the dialogue in that, to be kind of juvenile and not real believable, and it felt a little bit like just shock factor for the sake of shock factor. That was my initial reaction to it, and I've never gone back to it, and I might at some point. I mean, I've kind of opened myself up to more kind of mature things with, more vulgarity and stuff. And I've kind of found it within myself to look past that stuff and enjoy a really good story despite that stuff. And sometimes even not because of it, but but where a thing just feels like it really needs that stuff to tell the story it's telling. But I didn't have that with Preacher, so I haven't bothered with that TV show, and big fans of that have kind of said nothing but bad things about it. So I have not felt the need to take a look at that. Because I'm a crazy person and collect every TV show and movie based on a comic book, I will own it at some point, even if I never watch it, because again, I'm nuts. But I'll probably, at least if that ever happens, I mean, when that happens, when inevitably I end up finding that on a for sale somewhere, I will at least try the pilot. Reptile Dude 21, what kind of dog do you have? Did you adopt? Yes, I did adopt my dog. We have a okay, so when we got our dog, what I really wanted was a tiny German Shepherd, which of course doesn't exist. So I wanted a black dog with short hair, but I wanted a really small one. German Shepherd. That's not a German Shepherd. What am I thinking of? I wanted a black dog with short fur that was hair that was real small, and I ended up finding that in a really interesting cross, which I'd never seen before, but I'm not a dog person. So my dog Apollo is a Dachshund mixed with a Chihuahua, and I never thought I would have a Chihuahua or want a Chihuahua, but he's got kind of like he's got more of like the Dachshund build, but then he's got Chihuahua ears, and he's got Chihuahua whiskers, and he's got kind of a Chihuahua tail. And you can see pictures of him on my Facebook. What else? Chewbacca's lover. You've become so desensitized now that you might like Preacher. I'm thinking of Deadpool and Kick-Ass. Yeah. I mean, remember, I'm the guy that turned off Blade 3 times watching that opening sequence because I just couldn't deal with all the blood and violence. And I'm not like that anymore, for better or worse. I've just been inundated with this stuff for so long, and I worry about that sometimes, that I have gotten too desensitized, and that I have allowed my standards for certain things to lower. But I also would like to think that my tastes have matured before they've become immature, and that I can, again, appreciate those things when they're necessary for the story, or that I can look past them when the story is really well told. But you could make the argument that we shouldn't have to look past those things if they shouldn't be there and aren't serving the story in the first place. Sometimes it becomes kind of just a necessity in doing my job, I think. And I don't mean to ignore those things. Like, if they're there and they don't serve the story, I will talk about the fact that they are gratuitous, but it won't necessarily make me turn it off anymore, like it might have at one time. Daniel Davis says his mom has a weak stomach and can't stand excessive violence either. Yeah, I have kind of a weak stomach. Again, I think that's gotten a little bit better. It's worse with like real life stuff than it is with things in fiction. Although I think a really well told gruesome story told in prose bothers me more than seeing it explicitly happen on screen. If you describe it just the right way, you can turn my stomach and I will leave the room. That happened to me in college once, when someone was reading a story in an English class, and I had to get up and leave because I was physically ill. And it was that was very effective storytelling. Kelly Jones, a question for Cap. Why do you consider it unbelievable that Peter Parker makes his Spider-Man costume in the movies when cosplayers make their own from scratch for every convention they attend? It's that material that, first of all, the cosplay thing I think has gotten a lot easier since then. So in 2002, I don't know so much. And a lot of my complaint about that at the time is because when I saw that in the theater, I was like, that doesn't feel likely to me that he would be able to do that. It's not just, and I mean, I'm putting myself back in that period of time. Like the cosplay thing had not exploded yet to the point it has now. And I think a lot of materials have gotten more accessible, and doing that job, I think, is a little bit cheaper, maybe a lot cheaper than it was back then. But it's not just a matter of ability, it's a matter of money. He's completely broke. He goes and I'm talking about just that first movie. The thing with Amazing Spider-Man is basketball fabric. I'm not totally buying that he's able to get his hands on that, and that is, it looks like a costume that cost Hollywood thousands of dollars to put together. But when you like if somebody makes that costume in real life, it's not made of the same fabric. Like it looks good, it looks really close. It's not what was in that movie. With the first Spider-Man movie, Sam Raimi, 2002, he's got $100 to his name, and he makes a makeshift costume and then suddenly leaps to that costume. Was it because it took him longer to make it, or was it because he suddenly has the resources and we're not told how he got the resources? That just never jived for me. Ancient Futurist. I've been getting this a lot lately. Are you ever going to make another documentary? I would like to. But as I've said before, I'm not totally sure what it would be about, and that is a huge, monumental undertaking. I lost a lot of sleep and had a hard time doing a lot of other projects when I was working on Midwestern panels, and that year, 2014 into 15, but especially 14, was absolutely insane. I was a crazy person. I did that trip because it lined up to be the best time that I could go and take the team with me that went with me. It was a weekend. Vince was able to take off. Brandon was able to take off. The thing is, I did that while I was in the middle of trying to finish up Spawn Year, and I'm now going into the sequel to Spawn Year, and so I don't want to make a movie while I'm trying to do another one of those shows. That's a lesson that I've learned. I don't know if I had more stamina then because I was a little bit younger, or if it's because the stuff I'm working on, I'm more thorough about it. I take more time on it. This is why rewinds sometimes have to take a back seat if I'm working on a really big project, just because they in and of themselves are kind of small, big projects, if that makes any sense. But I do want to do another one at some point, and I can't be working on a novel or working on a big narrative project. And a lot of it too is, I say stamina. I want to think it's not stamina. I want to think it's just irons in the fire. Freddie wasn't born yet when I made Midwestern panels. I had one child to take care of, and he was becoming pretty autonomous at his age. He was 4. We have a third child on the way now, and I've got to be really careful not to overextend myself too much farther than I already do. I would describe myself as an overextender. I always will do that to some degree, but I can't go too much more farther than I already have. So that's got to be a thing that I'm focusing on, and is kind of the only thing I'm focusing on. But once again, I am taking submissions for good ideas for documentaries to eventually try to put in the pipeline. And I just haven't landed on the thing that I want to devote myself to that much, months and months of editing, a lot of planning, a lot of logistics in getting a trip together and an itinerary together, and saving money, all of that stuff. Like it's got to be a thing that I'm really, really excited to do when I finally land on the right one. William Parcell says time has gone by fast. Yes, it has. Mario 500 now. This is a thing I thought about answering last week and didn't get to. Had you ever considered drinking carbonated beverages without sugar, such as Coca-Cola Zero and Sprite Zero? So as a lot of you guys know by now, I have given up soda entirely. It has been at least 10 or 11 weeks, maybe a little bit longer, since I had a drop of anything carbonated. I have replaced soda with tea. I have lost quite a bit of weight, and I have been avoiding Mountain Dew or any kind of carbonated beverage like the plague, as if I were an alcoholic or something, because I'm afraid if I touch the stuff at all, I'll go right back to drinking 3 or 4 a day as I was before. And that was getting to my brain. It made it difficult to be as sharp as I feel like I need to be to do my job and be on camera and be as engaging and fun as is humanly possible. And again, just sharp. And so a lot of it was less about losing weight and more about just I felt like it was getting to my brain. But of course, I also feel so much better now that I've changed the way I eat entirely, and that I'm not drinking soda anymore. And I get that those beverages don't have sugar and don't have caffeine, but I'm still worried about the carbonation. I'm worried about the taste. I'm worried that anything bubbly like that is going to make me want to go right back to Mountain Dew. Even Sprite, I've stayed away from it because I'm just afraid of kind of like a sense memory thing making me want to go back and drink a lot of Mountain Dew. AMC Comics, Gotham by Gaslight was a big step up from The Killing Joke and Batman Harley Quinn. Oh, yes, absolutely it was. Eric and I just did that one last night. We did our blend commentary, and that's going to be coming up on Thursday. And I don't mind saying ahead of time, I enjoyed it quite a bit. I need to give it a second watch because I think ultimately the answer to the big mystery might be problematic and might not totally ultimately line up and work. But overall, I really loved the atmosphere of that, the look of that, and I really enjoyed that I was looking at a piece based on a work that I like a lot, that goes its own direction and tells almost an entirely different story, and that I was really engaged with the story that it was telling, and I was hoping that's what they would do, actually. I was really hoping that it wouldn't be too much of a direct adaptation, and I knew they were going their own way with some things, like adding Catwoman, but I wasn't expecting a completely different and kind of more complex story. And one of my big complaints about the original Gotham by Gaslight is just that it's truncated. It's too short. It should have been. And this is how we would do it now. Like, that movie to me feels like what we would do with that material in comics now. It would be a 4-issue miniseries. It would be like a 120-page graphic novel before it was a 48-page one-shot. And I really enjoyed getting that experience from it, and I felt like it was Bruce Timm and his team kind of bringing their A game back, and it harkened back to some of I think the best stuff tone-wise, stylistically, and even storytelling-wise from things that they had done in the DCEU before. And the animation looked more like that than I expected to, and I think fit really well with Mignola's style. So there you go. I just gave you a mini review of that movie. I always do that. I'm always like, I'm not going to review it right now, and I just go in review mode, and then now you know. So there you go. There's a little sneak peek of my review of that movie. Again, Eric and I had not seen it yet, so you'll see us reacting to things for the first time and kind of putting together our thoughts. And I'm going to try to watch it one more time before Sunday if I have time, and I'll do a review maybe a little bit more thorough than what I just gave you there. And if I don't get a chance to do it then, I'll do it a couple weeks from now. Kelly Jones again, what are your thoughts / feelings on movies like Jumper and Push, where the characters have superpowers, but without the flair of becoming costume superheroes? I like a good variety of things. I'd throw Chronicle in there too. I think it's cool to have, and by the way, I've not seen either of those movies, and need to do that at some point. I have maybe both of those on my shelf back here as superhero movies, and they show up on official lists. They show up a lot on lists that people have made of things that kind of count as superhero movies. No, I like the Heroes thing. I don't think, like NBC Heroes, I don't think it's like against the idea of doing a superhero or being too like held back and trepidatious to do superheroes without costumes, where it's like, oh, people will never believe that. I don't think that's necessarily the reason to do it. I think the idea is to say that in the real world, maybe that's not what would happen. I think it's also okay to say in the real world, maybe that is what would happen. Different takes. Just because you have a believable take on a thing doesn't mean that there aren't other takes that you can make me buy just as much. And so I like that sense of variety and in a broad degree of taste. When you see a thing that I think Smallville had this problem to a degree, when you see a thing, and in a lot of just like TV shows about superheroes before it became so mainstream, before you had Arrow and stuff, I think you'll see a lot of like real defensive writing in a thing that doesn't have costumes, and that's when you know that it came from that place, as opposed to, well, what might it be like? Let's try to answer the sci-fi what-if statement for superheroes. If we really had them, what would that be like? And not every superhero story has to be that. It can be your standard comic book, well, it's a heightened world, or it can be a world that looks a little bit closer to ours. And I don't think I don't think it's fair to say that's played out. Necessarily, like, I don't want a thing to look like it's the first time we ever did that. Like, I don't want it to be novel or gimmicky about it, where it's like, nobody's ever asked the question before, what if superpowered people were running around in the real world? No, we've done that to death now, but that is in and of itself its own story type now for superhero storytelling. So there are still fresh ways potentially to tell any kind of story, because we all have our own perspectives and backgrounds that lead us to our ideas about those things. Well, guys, I only have 2 minutes left. If I was to make this just an hour show, I may go a little bit late today because I know there's a bunch more questions that I have not gotten to, and I'm going to do my level best to answer 3 or 4 more in quick, rapid succession. A thing I should never say. And if you didn't get your question answered, save it for next time, because I am doing these every week. And again, have every intention of continuing that, considering how many folks have been coming out of the woodwork to talk to me, and how healthy of a size of audience, and how thoughtful the questions have been. You guys are great, and this is quickly becoming one of my favorite things to do. So thank you so much. Let's see. DJ, are you in the comments? Good to see you, buddy. People are talking about Hayden Christensen in Jumper. Is that what is he the guy in Jumper? Mind the Gap. What was your Mind the Gap? He's been with us for years and years. What was your first Batman piece of merchandise? It was a t-shirt. I've told this story before. My dad came home one night with a Batman t-shirt when Batman 89 was coming out. I don't know if it had released yet or if it was on its way. And I was fascinated by that symbol and was an instant Batman fan, not based on any stories or what the character looked like or the idea of it or anything, but just simply that symbol. And that instantly made me really intrigued, and I had to know everything I could about it. And that's what makes me a Batman fan. After that, I can tell you what my first Batman toy was. And I don't have it anymore, but if I'm going to do this again, if you'll bear with me, I'll show you a larger version of it, which I found at a flea market a few years back. And this will be better than if I could show you the original one I had, because it'll show up on camera better. But this is... So the first Batman toy I ever had was the Purple Joker van from that movie, and it wasn't Micro Machine sized, but it was kind of, I think it was a little smaller than a Hot Wheel car. It was pretty small. I have a larger one now. It's kind of dusty. I got to dust that off. But this is, of course, what that van from that movie looks like, and a smaller version of this was the first Batman toy that I ever owned. So it wasn't an action figure. It was that. Thoughts on Incredibles 2 trailer? We will talk about that on the omnibus. I don't want to weigh in on that right now. I'm excited about it. It's not exactly where Eric and I thought it would go with it, and I like that. I'm intrigued by it, but I don't want to say anything else about it right now. Lego Geek, hey Cap, I love the fact that you're doing these open forums, and equally look forward to Batcap. Thank you very much. So Batcap, the 48-hour Halloween is Batman Year, so you will hear me use that interchangeably, because I'm afraid if I keep just saying Batcat, people will be like, why are you talking about yourself in the third person? Or they just won't know what I'm talking about. So I refer to it cursorily as Batman Year because that's basically what it is, but that's not accurate, and it's not the actual title of the thing. So for folks that have not heard about this yet, and if you have, just relax a second, Spawn Year was Spawn reviews every day, theoretically, for a year. And even though it took 2 years to make it, within the fiction of it, that's what it is. The whole thing, actually, spoiler alert, is decompressed in 3 hours in my brain, in a program that my brain is going through. But I am experiencing it as one comic book a day, or Spawn item that I'm reviewing. Batman Year is only Batman Year in the sense that, theoretically, hopefully, it will only take us a year to produce it. I'm not promising that this time. And that kind of makes it easier for people to swallow that if it does take longer, because at least the word year is not in it. But that's my hope. That's my plan. It's going to be posting for 50 straight weeks. So almost a year. It's 48 hours. And I think some people think that it's actually going to come out over 48 hours. We're not doing it that way, and I don't have the entire thing pre-recorded. I'm a few ahead, but I'm working on it. I'm about a fifth of the way through writing the show. But anyway, and this has been in the pipeline for a long time now. It was supposed to come out last year, and we had to delay it a year. So I've had a little bit longer to work on it, but the reviews take longer to write because the material is more meaty, and I'm reviewing more than one thing at a time with most of it. But anyway, so the thing takes place over 48 hours, so each episode you watch is me reviewing something, or reviewing a comic or two in Nightfall, within an hour, but it's also not like 24. It's not in real time. But each one is supposed to take place in an hour of a day. And so that's what Batcap is going to be. And the prologue drops on Friday. I'm so excited about it. Batmania is going to be finished on Thursday. I missed yesterday, so you'll have 2 today. I had some technical difficulties. I just wasn't able to get it uploaded. I have one uploading right now with Batman versus Two-Face. And then the one right after that, which is, I should know this off the top of my head, but it's not coming to me. The one right after that is, of course. So Scooby-Doo Brave and the Bold, that will post today. Tomorrow, it will be the final episode of Batmania, which is, of course, Gotham by Gaslight. And then Friday, you will get the prologue for Batman Year, for Batcap, the 48-hour Halloween. And I am stoked to finally show it to you. It's technically 3 years in the making. And it's going to be a real big deal to finally get to show you guys the premise of that and what we're working on with it. And I hope everybody really enjoys it. I'm shooting for Fridays on that show. I'm gonna try each week to get the whole thing ready for you by Friday. And I'm going to work ahead as much as humanly possible. But that show is going to be longer than the average Spawn Year episode. They're probably going to average 15 to 20 minutes. The first episode is a review of Vengeance of Bane, which I had a lot to say about, and is an oversized comic. And it is with all the other stuff in the video. There's a narrative teaser and stuff. The review itself is like 16, 17 minutes long. And it's pretty thorough. And that's kind of the tack I take for the rest of it, or at least that I have so far. Because again, it's so much meatier than Spawn, and it won't be a lot of my repeating the same issues with the thing over and over again, because it's actually straightforward narrative and doesn't retcon itself every 30 pages, and more or less most of the time makes some degree of sense, and is often thought-provoking and character-driven, and I have, actually some interesting things that I can sink my teeth into with that. So yeah. Oh, this is a good one. Base EXC. Hey Cap, do you have a favorite Batman suit? Yeah, it's still 89, and that's mostly a nostalgic thing. It's impossible for me to get away from that suit. It's obviously not the most functional. It's not the most practical. Nobody wants to have to be this fighting crime, but it's the look I think of when I think of Batman. It's my age. It's the version that introduced me to Batman in the first place. Close second is hard. It's probably not the Batman the Animated Series suit, but the suit that is in the comics during that period with the yellow circles. So it's essentially that suit, but it's the Nightfall suit, right? It's the Norm Brayfogle and the Chuck Dixon era. Like that's probably my favorite Bat suit. I used to say it was Neil Adams, because that also is of course like real nostalgic for me and real classic looking. But if I'm truly honest with myself, I think I get more excited about seeing the Nightfall kind of in pre-Nightfall kind of era Batsuit. And I don't think I'm just saying that because that's what I'm in the middle of reviewing right now. Although it is so exciting, like such a privilege to be in the middle of, such a treat, I should say, to be in the middle of reviewing my favorite Batman era stuff right now. Scooby-Doo, is there going to be a new Count and Crypt the Freaks anytime soon? I want to say yes. I've got to get the rhythm of this Batman Year thing before I can start announcing other written series, and I don't even want to announce them. I just want to put them up when I have a chance to sit down and do them and put them up. So yeah, hopefully, fingers crossed. But I feel like I've got to continue reading and watching things for the omnibus, so that I hate to put that ahead of everything and not do written stuff, but I mean, Batcap is going to be obviously a written show and a produced show. But if I just focus on written stuff, you guys won't see as much from us. And I know a lot of people really like the more like in-depth, thorough conversations. And I know there's some people that like that even more than the written stuff. And so it's always hard to gauge and find like the perfect balance between those two things. We just do way too much, and it's a nice problem to have that people care enough. I realized that if all I was doing was Superhero Rewind, the view counts would be bigger. We would look like a more sizable channel, I guess. But I also know that we've got a good, a small but dedicated, diehard core audience for the more podcasty things, and I want to be able to weigh in on stuff because we just get inundated with messages about, what did you think of this one? What did you think of this? And it gives me an excuse to keep up with things. And so that's a lot of why I do that. So, thanks for your patience. Going to do my level best to give everybody everything that they really want to see. But I have to really focus on the stuff I really want to work on. Let's see. Yeah, Daniel Davis. I still remember when Superhero Rewind was weekly. It's been a while. I don't know that show can realistically ever be weekly again unless it's all I'm doing, just because it got so much more thorough. Like I could back off a bunch of other things and just say like I'm going to make sure Rewind comes out every week, but I would have to force myself to 6 pages, and I think the show would suffer for that. I really do. That's my personal opinion about my own material. I think the show would suffer if I forced it back to the average length that those shows were when I was able to put them out every week. Man, so many comments and questions. AMC Comics, what do you think of the idea of DC releasing another animated Batman 66 film as a Nightwing movie with Burt Ward? That's interesting. I'm assuming that's just an idea somebody's had and that's not actually been announced and I didn't hear about it. I don't immediately hate that. I think what I would do with it would, because I think there's been a little bit of talk about an animated Wonder Woman 77. Is that a rumor or has that been? I'm not sure. Anyway, I would do a crossover with that universe and use that to get people more excited about a Wonder Woman 77 animated movie, because I really don't know if realistically that would stand on its own, if there would be enough of a following of people who would buy that, because I don't even think the 66 movies did all that well. And obviously there are fans of Wonder Woman 77, but I don't think it's in the public consciousness as hard as Batman 66 even. So I would love to see a kind of loose adaptation. It would have to be very loose, of the Batman 66 Wonder Woman 77 crossover. And since Adam West wouldn't be able to be there, you make it like post Batman's death or something, and you say, and you do what that book does, which is you say like that world has grown and matured, or maybe depending on your perspective, depending on how you look at it, maybe it's degenerated and it's now the 70s, and we see what the 60s world looks like with some of the politics and the culture and things that we have in the 70s, and then put Wonder Woman in the middle of that. That's what I would do with that. With Nightwing kind of taking over the mantle, but maybe as Nightwing, or maybe as a Dick Grayson Batman. I don't know. I don't know how people would feel about that, but I think that could be really interesting. Like I don't know if people would think that was kind of sacrilegious or whatever, but to see Burt Ward do kind of the Dick in the Batsuit thing would maybe be really interesting. Folks, I think that's going to be it for me today. Thanks a bunch for watching. Sure appreciate it. And I will see you again next Wednesday. If I didn't get to your question, and I know there were probably a million that I didn't, feel free to send them my way to be tackled by me and Eric, potentially, on the Omnibus this week for the Q&A there, for the letters pages. And if not, hang on to them, and you can ask me live next time we get together, or whenever you're able to join me again. You guys are absolutely fabulous. Once again, I sure appreciate it. This is a whole lot of fun. And I will see you again next Wednesday. Same cap time, same cap channel. Thanks for watching, guys.